but at some point the math is the math. And
I think we can do a better job using that information.
it reinforces my belief that I have the best constituents. Hello, Austin. Hello, Clawback Watchers, District 6. Welcome to another episode of the Clawback. We're going to talk about some really great stuff today. We've got some awesome guests. Cory, we've got from the Long Center, and we've got Dr. Watson, and we have Mobley. We've got a hell of a show. But let's talk a little bit, as we normally do at the very beginning, talk a little bit about this ongoing situation that we are all in, our pandemic situation. Here's the chart. Oh, wait, it looked better that way. You're doing great, Austin. Look at that number of hospitalizations keeps going down. You're wearing your masks. You're avoiding unsafe situations. You're taking care of each other. Great job, everybody. Keep up the good work. Keep up the good work. Now, we're probably seeing some news stories about the governor reopening some businesses. And I think if we all stick to what we've learned and over these months going through this and taking our precautions and wearing masks and avoiding those close-in indoor situations, I think we're going to be good. And I think we can find a place to sustain our community and our economy while the medicine and science finishes a vaccine and we can get it distributed. But it's going to take still months of this, and we've got to be ready for that. Because not just about developing a vaccine, but then testing it and ensuring that it's safe and then rolling it out. It is not an overnight process. But still, keep up your support of our local businesses, especially our local restaurants. They need all the help you can get. And I certainly do quite a bit of takeout and delivery to my own home. And I know a lot of us are doing that. And it's helping our small businesses and our small restaurants survive. And that leads me into some of the stuff that we did in the council meeting last night. You might forgive me if I have some bags under my eyes. The council meeting went late, as they sometimes do. We were, I think, almost to 11 o'clock at night in the council meeting last night. We passed an item, it was item 62, which talked about finding additional monies to help sustain our music venues, our bars and restaurants, childcare industry, the types of things that really the industries that were harmed first, way back at the beginning of the pandemic, and the ones who are unfortunately likely to recover last. Because even as we feel more comfortable and more confident about how all of this works with masks and indoors and all of that, those are really the industries that are going to have the hardest time coming back. And so we passed a somewhat of an omnibus resolution. So we should see some of that come back in short order, hopefully within the next 4 weeks. And we'll start getting additional resources out into the community. This is on top of the resources that were already created. But there's so much more need than there is money. And that is often a problem when you don't have an even barely minimally functional state and federal government. But I'm proud of the work that we've done at the city so far, even though admittedly it hasn't helped everyone that needs help. The work that I did creating the small business grant program, which has helped many businesses, but there's still a lot more that need help. And we're still working to get that help out there. And then the other thing we voted on, there was a lot of stuff we voted on, but another thing that's kind of related to that is the council took another step forward on the convention center expansion, which really, there's a lot of very interesting information out there about what convention centers are and do. But you all may recall that we even had an election about it back in 2018 or 2019. In pandemic time, it could have been 10 years ago at this point, but we did have an election and the public said, you know what, if it's a good idea, the council should do it. And it's up to the council to decide. And we keep getting better and better information from our economists and from our city staff and the folks who are doing the deals. And, we're able to take a corner of downtown where the red line ends. This is really at the end of where District 6 gets on that train. This is a benefit for us too. And build it into a much better, more open and engaged and active space funded with hotel taxes. This isn't coming from your property taxes or sales taxes you pay. This comes from hotel taxes. It helps generate more hotel taxes, which then funds more cultural arts and historic preservation that is allowed under state law. And then the majority of those hotel tax collected under state law are basically restricted just to convention center expansion. And so by doing it the right way, in concert with the neighborhood and the city and the Waterloo Greenway and the Palm School and all of the really interesting assets District 6 is going to have a pretty great amenity right at the end of the red line. So I'm excited to see that take another step forward. There'll be more coming back to the council to talk about that as we work through the more and more details as the details are developed. But even in a pandemic, we're doing some great work at the city council, and it's just tough to follow along because we're doing meetings from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And that's why it's a professional job and it's a full-time gig. So I want to bring on my first guest. This is we've had a few medical experts joining the show over the course of the pandemic, and I'm really fortunate that the chief medical officer for the Austin Round Rock region of Baylor Scott and Wright, Dr. Rob Watson, is joining the show. Dr. Watson, thank you for coming on the Clawback today.
Sure. Thank you, Jimmy. Great to be here.
Before we get into the details and what you're experiencing, are you safe and healthy? How is your family doing?
Well, I appreciate you asking. Yes, we've managed to get through this, and everybody's been great. It's like others probably, it's been a great time to enjoy your family in a setting where you didn't have your normal activities. But it's my two children and my wife, we've really had a great time spending time together. But I can tell you, when the school year started and things started to reform in a way that we thought safely our kids could start to go back and do things, they've done that. But everybody's healthy, so thank you.
I'm really glad to hear that. You're in a very important role. The medical community is made up of some pretty big players. Baylor Scott and White is one of them, and as chief medical officer for Austin Round Rock, I'm really interested in your thoughts on how we've been handling this and how you've been engaged with the cities and the counties in this area to help us navigate this really complex and challenging time.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great question. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is the way that the different health systems have come together, the way that the city and county municipalities, Austin Public Health, have all come together basically to tackle something that's just unprecedented for our time. The other thing I'm proud of is just our communities. I mean, once we started to understand the limitations in terms of treating this disease that we had on the medical side, and the steps that we needed to take in our communities, both with ourselves as healthcare workers, but also out in our communities. Once we understood those things and started to communicate those, I think the communities responded tremendously. And I tell people, we've sort of run this experiment twice. We thought we knew what we were doing with social distancing and hand washing, and then we tried to relax those things a little bit and sort of test the waters. And we saw that the cases started to increase again. So we said we need to social distance, we need to wash our hands, and we need to wear a mask. And we did that. And thankfully, we saw the numbers come back down. So we on the healthcare side are extremely thankful for the work that's being done by city and county governments and by our communities, frankly, to keep our hospitals and clinics and healthcare workers from being overwhelmed with what could have happened if we decided not to do those things.
Thank you. It's been a really challenging place for government, and we've taken a lot of really difficult risks in terms of shutting things down and slowing the spread. And it seems like those decisions have worked, and it hasn't really been a good relationship with the governor, who forced our hand in some of those kind of reopening test scenarios. But I think Austin, probably more so than most communities, has really stepped up, and it's a credit to medical professionals like yourself, but mostly our community members who really took the lead and wear their masks and do a good job protecting themselves and protecting their family and their neighbors. Tell me, what I'm interested also is, the pandemic didn't stop all of the other ailments that lead people to seek healthcare. How have you integrated telehealth into this kind of remote provision of health into the care that Baylor Scott and White does?
Yeah, I think that's a critical point. If the pandemic had occurred 2 decades ago, we would not have had the technological tools that we have today to keep in touch with our patients. Our system had been working, thankfully, pre-pandemic, obviously not having any idea that this was coming, on how do we connect with patients. And we had some tools in place where patients could connect with us virtually. Certainly, they could send us messages. We could send them messages to communicate. They could schedule appointments online. So we had the makings of our original, or sort of the base of our digital platform in place. But almost overnight, we had to ramp that up to full force, and that included taking our ambulatory providers or our clinic-based physicians and workforce and trying to keep them safe and put them at home, and also trying to keep our patients safe by not having them come in for visits that historically they would have. And so telehealth has taken a huge role. And in fact, you saw at mid to early March or late March and almost all through April, our virtual visits actually surpassed our in-person visits. One of the other tools that we used that was just critical was an online screening tool that allowed people to go online, enter in their symptoms, and then determine, do they need to have an electronic visit with the provider to determine whether or not they need to be tested. And we ended up screening over 600,000 people. And you just can't stress enough the importance of that, because if we hadn't had those tools and a way to communicate with patients and try to guide them through this process, I really believe our emergency departments in our hospitals would have been overrun with people trying to get care and trying to understand if they needed to be tested, when in reality, thankfully, most people didn't need to be tested, and or if they did and they even had the disease, we could manage that as an outpatient. So it was very crucial.
Well, thanks for your quick action and innovation, and really the collaboration across health providers that I know has been going on, and the city and the county have been convening folks, and it's been really important work to ensure that we're all kind of doing our best to provide the same care to folks across this community, no matter their background, no matter their socioeconomic status. Something that I know that's important to the medical profession and to yourself, and certainly to elected officials. The last question I have for you really is, what is your advice for the community moving forward? We've got a flu season coming up. There's still obviously COVID that we're dealing with. We're waiting on vaccine development. What are your words of wisdom as the chief medical officer for Austin, Round Rock, and Baylor Scott and White?
Yeah, well, I think we'll start with flu. I mean, we need to treat the flu like we do every year, right? Annually we can have up to 50,000 to 80,000 deaths from flu. We have a vaccine, unlike COVID, that works. It doesn't work 100% of the time, but it certainly decreases the incidence of flu, and it's incredibly important in our vulnerable populations. So I would tell people, get your vaccinations. Those are going to start becoming available. We have our first drive-through flu vaccination site that's going to take place tomorrow. I think there's information about that on our website, but there's a lot of places to get a flu vaccine, and certainly you need to do that. I think the other thing I would stress is that we believe that the things that we're doing to prevent COVID, hand washing, masking, social distancing, should have some impact on the flu. And so we're hopeful that we'll see a decrease in the incidence of flu for the same reasons that we're seeing a decrease in COVID. And then the last thing, and I really can't stress this enough, is that we can't have folks avoiding their health care. Basically, there's already data starting to come out showing the number of deaths that are probably attributable to patients delaying or avoiding care related to COVID. And again, so these are folks who are sort of collateral damage from the pandemic. They don't have COVID, but they've got other chronic health conditions. I could go into a lot of statistics that would sort of stagger you about what we're seeing, but people have to continue to stay in touch with their physicians, with their healthcare systems, and seek care, because we can't have a second wave of folks who are much more sick and debilitated from not seeking care at a time when we can provide the care safely, and we know we can do that because we've been doing it since the pandemic started.
Well, thank you, Dr. Watson, for all the work that you've done in leadership through this pandemic, and for your own provider and for your own patients. I know you have a busy day that you need to get back to. Thanks again for everything, and thanks for taking time to share your thoughts and your wisdom with the community.
Well, thank you, and thank you to your constituents for all they're doing. It really has made a big impact, so we really appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much. Really great to hear. There's nothing great about a pandemic. There are real folks whose lives are being impacted. There have been deaths in the community, but it's great to hear from medical professionals that we really are taking every precaution that we can do, certainly at the local level. it would be great if our state and federal partners really stepped up and provided better testing or more rapid testing, and had certainly in the early portion of the pandemic done more to produce PPE at a faster rate. But thanks again to Dr. Watson for shining a light on all of the great work that we've been doing here at the local level. Well, I want to bring on our musical guest. Part of the challenge of the pandemic is, how do we maintain our status as the live music capital of the world? And one small way that I do it is bringing on some of our really talented Austin local musicians and having them be live for you right here on the Clawback. So I want to welcome Mobley to the show. Hello, Mobley.
Hey, how's it going?
It's such a challenging time for everybody. Before we get into that, I want to ask, how are you doing? How's your family? Is everybody safe and healthy?
Yeah, we're doing all right.
I'm glad to hear that. So what was the I mean, you make your living as a musician.
That's right.
Right? And what was the impact to you and your work right at the beginning when we were canceling South by, and we were, I mean, what has been the impact now? Here we are in September.
It's been pretty colossal. Obviously, South by was the first domino to fall, and that was projected to be a pretty big part of our income for the year. So that was, I think it was the right decision, obviously, but it was devastating from a business standpoint. And then, all my touring this summer was canceled. I put out a single a couple weeks before everything started shutting down, and so the rollout of the record I was putting out got pushed back by about a year. And obviously now we're at a point where I think most reasonable people don't think it's safe for us to be playing live shows. So yeah, it's a very destabilizing moment, but I do think it's important for us to really keep our eye on the ball of preventable deaths here, and that's way more important to me than my career or income for a year.
Well, thanks for sticking with it. And making your living as a musician takes a lot of hustle, and even more so during this time. And you're making it work as much as you can. I know all of Austin, and as a council member, appreciate everything that you and musicians do to maintain our live music ecosystem. Something that I thought was funny, you and I actually have something in common. Before we did our work that is our passion, right? I'm doing my passion in the job that I'm in. You were also a web developer.
That's right. Yeah.
And I spent 20 years building websites, and I was doing it for small businesses, and got involved in the LGBT Chamber of Commerce, and I learned a lot about what challenges small businesses were facing, and what kind of web development were you doing?
I was mostly doing front end development. I was kind of the peak of my involvement in that industry was around the time when people stopped calling themselves web designers and started calling themselves front end devs. So that's I did both the design side and the front end coding side.
My tenure in web development was so long. I started when people called themselves webmasters. That's how early in the era I was doing it.
Nice.
It was a long time ago. Let's talk about your music. Your work is known for tackling some tough, difficult topics, but also having space for interpretation. It's a really challenging balance. How do you do it?
I can't exactly say how I do it. I think what probably produces whatever alchemy winds up giving it the balance that it has is that I feel compelled to talk about important things if I'm going to be given any kind of platform or stage. So that feels like a compulsory piece of it, and then the rest of it is just putting those messages with music that I like, and a lot of times that means that there's kind of a tension or kind of a level of subtlety or even subterfuge that the messaging has within the overall sound of the music, because as much as I like talking about, heavy, serious things that need to be talked about, not every song I write is some minor key dirge. So you have to find some way of navigating that tension.
I have at least some appreciation for that in my work too, and you can really get weighed down if all you do is work on the most difficult issues. And so I'm really glad that you are spending some time on the show with us today, and to share your music and your work with me and with the folks who are watching. So you're the song that you're going to perform for us. It was just released.
Yep.
Why don't you talk a little bit about the song and then take it away?
Sure. Yeah. The song is called James Crow, and we released it on Wednesday, and it's about racism. It's about the first line is, "I've been seeing the world through a dead man's eyes." So it's about kind of the bad ideas that so many of us have inherited, and the ways in which they've entrenched themselves in systems that oppress people, and about the struggle to free yourself from those ideas, and grab hold of better ones. So this song's called James Crow. I've been seeing the world through a dead man's eyes. And when I lay me down, I did not rise. But then I noticed that I've been watching myself from a car outside. So to bring me round, it took me down a long dark ride. That's where I found him at. James Crow, come and tell me what you know. James Crow, you're a devil in a daydream. James Crow, you're walking for me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now. James Crow, come and tell me what you know. James Crow, you're a devil in a daydream. James Crow, will you bring it to me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now. You've been selling the world on a dead man's lies. The kind that won't decay or fade away, a passing time. I play the scientific, I can't be tamed. Pray to a religion that can't be named. But all I really want is to crawl back in my body and be free. James Crow, come and tell me what you know. James Crow, you're a devil in a daydream. James Crow, you're walking for me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now. James Crow, come and tell me what you know. James Crow, you're a devil in a daydream. James Crow, will you bring it to me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now. Is there a fever worse than fate when you know what you lost, 'cause it's gone from the beginning? And I can feel it in the way that you are when you're James Crow, come and tell me what you know. James Crow, you're a devil in a daydream. James Crow, you're walking for me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now. James Crow, come and tell me what you know. James Crow, you're a devil in a daydream. James Crow, you bring it to me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now. James Crow, come and tell me what you know. James Crow, you're a devil in a daydream. James Crow, when you're walking for me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now. James Crow, come and tell me what you know. James Crow, you're a devil in a daydream. James Crow, when you're walking for me slow, singing, take it all back now, take it all back now.
Wow, that was amazing. That was amazing.
Thank you.
I mean, both applause and chills. Really, really powerful work, Mobley, and thank you so much for sharing it today, and for doing everything, for being so committed to your art that you're finding a way to survive in a pandemic.
Thank you.
Tell the folks where they can find your music, and where you're performing, and how folks can support you.
Yeah, you can find my music at mobleyWho.com, MOBLEYWHO, and on social media at mobleyWho. There are links to everything there, and you can find information about some upcoming live streams. And I'm actually doing a contest associated with this, where I'm going to be traveling around the city to play little curbside concerts from in front of people's houses. So you can enter all that on the website.
That sounds awesome. And good luck. Good luck, Mobley. Thanks again for spending some time with us today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Amazing music to be sharing with us. Chills. Well, let's go to our final guest for the show today. Someone who is a friend of mine who I've gotten to know pretty well and does works and leads in another area of art and music in our community. The president and CEO of the Long Center, Cory Baker.
Hi. Oh, he was so good. It makes me like miss shows and just, oh my gosh, he was amazing. But I don't know how I feel about going after that. I've been in the business long enough to know that it's like, man, that's when you're like end show, end scene.
That's it. I'm done. Have a nice night.
I don't know what else I can say. It's like all that.
Well, thank you, Cory, for spending some time with us on the show today. First off, how are you doing? How's your family? Everybody safe and healthy?
Yes, thank you so much for asking. I have 2 little boys at home, and I think what Dr. Watson said is so true. Despite the challenges, it's they're 3 and 5, and so to have some extra time with them at these ages has been really special, and we've been lucky to stay healthy. So thank you, and I hope you and your family are all doing well, as hanging in there as best as possible as well.
We're doing our best. I'm fortunate that my job can still be done remotely from home. As most folks who watch the show know, my boyfriend works for HEB and he's a checkout manager, and so his job does not work from home. And so we've been having the essential worker reality where you got to come home and kind of almost hazmat yourself and you take a shower and change your clothes and get all that done. And thankfully we've been able to be safe. And of course, HEB's done some good work, making sure folks are wearing masks and all that. But let's talk about the Long Center, because, one, I want you to start and just kind of explain, like give the short elevator on what the Long Center is and what it means to this community. And then I want to talk about how the pandemic's impacted it.
Absolutely. Well, the Long Center is, it's evolving. It's evolving just like Austin. It is a private nonprofit, but we are in a city-owned facility. So we very much think of ourselves as a community asset. So every year we ask ourselves the tough questions and make sure that we're serving the community. Many people know us as the home of the opera, symphony, and ballet. We are so lucky to have those 3 incredible organizations here in Austin. And so we are the permanent home for all 3. But besides that, the Long Center does a lot of education and outreach. We have free community programs actually at the venue. And then we are looking at how we can best serve the creative sector as a whole as a nonprofit. So really help the ecology of arts and music in Austin, and how we can just long-term help individual artists like Mobley. I'm so glad that you were able to kind of highlight they're struggling. And sometimes we don't think of them as kind of a necessity, especially in times like these where there's a lot of needs. But art brings so much to our lives, and it's so critical in our quality of life and in understanding and cultivating compassion. So the Long Center is really dedicated to make sure that artists can make a living.
One of the things that you said, I think, has been such an interesting educational moment for the community as a result of the pandemic, is the role that venues play in supporting artists. And, beyond the large artistic organizations, or the larger ones like the symphony and the ballet and the opera, the Long Center also supports artists of all kinds. And you guys do some really fun, or you did and will at some point in the future, a lot of fun events. And you've got the beautiful vista, of downtown and being able to do that. And at the same time, we're trying to build systems to support our live music venues and other artists. We've got creative space bond programs and all manner of things the council is trying to do. But I think the Long Center is really interesting because of the nexus it can serve. So
Mhm.
talk about like how you all have been working through the pandemic and how you're trying to pivot into what you think the future will hold.
Absolutely. And first of all, I want to say thank you for passing item 62. And that's just a drop in the bucket. I know we've been in touch, and pre-pandemic, you're such a supporter of the Long Center and the arts. And we love you. We appreciate the long nights and the hard work. And I mean, my colleagues across the country, I love that Austin really, we get it. We get that this is the soul of our community. And even if you're not a personal fan, that the creative sector really drives our economy here and is part of our brand for tourism. And so, I'm so proud of our council and our city and these kind of initiative like the Saves Act that you're working on right now. We're really at the forefront. So there's always, as you said, I love it. There's always more we can do, but I so appreciate the hard work that we've done. And I think you make the point, as it's kind of, sometimes people think of the Long Center either the show they've seen there or more kind of amorphous or as a venue. But one of the things that we actually were moving towards pre-pandemic, and it's really fast-tracked the need, and so therefore our response are there. Austin is filled with wonderful venues, incredible organizations that actually produce work like the ballet, fabulous artists and musicians and other organizations. So the Long Center was really moving in the direction of, what is our role as advocate, as catalyst? What kind of things can we be doing to raise the entire creative sector? And we are agnostic in many ways, that we are not creating any specific art form, or we are not part of a larger system. We are a nonprofit. So really, we are beholden to the city of Austin and to Austinites and to their needs. And so we've been really thinking about how can we create these platforms and create the infrastructure and the support system. So we're not just a venue, but we're also a service organization. And we quickly went, the pandemic, we had Harry Connick Jr. on Tuesday, and on Friday, campus closed on March 13th, and we've been out of the building since then. So we've really still remained very active. We're doing a lot of virtual program, Create in Place, where, again, we're really trying to elevate the work that's already happening in the community. So many artists just immediately went online on their own, independently, blood, sweat, and tears to just kind of connect with their audiences. So we've been really trying to elevate those and create paid opportunities for artists along the way. And we're going to continue to evolve and even look into where other industries, the tech industry, I was just talking to somebody about how sustainable farming does this really well, but how can we maybe create a co-op kind of organization where we can find economies of scale by helping the creative sector band together and do simple things like buy health benefits together or share office space or things like that. So as much as it was certainly difficult to have, our business is in gathering people together. So that hurt us immediately with the pandemic. I'm really proud of the team that have pivoted. And I have to say, the other angle that we rely on is fundraising. And our membership is incredible. And people, we just did a survey, and I was like at home crying because some of the results are just like, we can't wait to be back, or keep up the good work, keep hope alive. And, people really care about it and are rooting for us. So, and we've had a lot of corporate donors. You have Baylor, Scott & White. They're a major sponsor of ours, have been since the beginning, continue to support us through this. So, it's definitely been jarring, but I think as a community is reminding us all who we are and who we want to be and what's important to us as a community. So that rally has been fun to watch.
And y'all have been doing some great work, Cory. I'm really glad that you took some time to be on the show today. And one of the things that I know you and I agree on, and I've been talking to more folks about, is, there were challenges in the music industry and the arts industry, sustainability issues and long-term, planning challenges. And, we have this moment where things are down as an opportunity to build back better. We don't just have to go back to the status quo. We can build something and use this moment and be stronger and more sustainable and more fiscally solid moving forward, and have the city and the Long Center be better partners with the ecosystem and be the nexus that can elevate everybody's work and keep all of the beautiful art and music and culture that is created, literally created in our city, and also performed in our city, and keep it alive. Cory, thank you so much for all your work at the Long Center. Why don't you tell folks one more time, how can folks support the Long Center and find what you all are up to?
Absolutely. Website's the best place, longcenter.org, or follow us on social media. Again, a lot of content virtually that you can see. And of course, we really appreciate support in the form of membership as well. But just, get involved and stay engaged. And we'll see you soon. We have some really incredible announcements coming up about some partnerships and some programming outdoors. So stay tuned.
Very exciting. Cory, thank you so much, and good luck to the Long Center.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Another great show today. Thanks again to Dr. Watson and Cory Baker and Mobley for joining us on the show. We are doing so much important work at the city, and part of the reason we can do that work is because I get to represent and have the honor of representing District 6 on the city council. We are in campaign season. The election is in November. Here's where you can go to sign up in support. You can make donations. You can request a yard sign if you live in the district. Be a part of this movement that is bringing innovation and fiscal responsibility to the city of Austin and ensuring that we build back this community better. That's the commitment I'm making to the public. And thanks again to Dr. Watson for showing that we are really doing everything we can possibly do. Austin is leading on pandemic support, and Austin is also leading on ensuring that as much of this community makes it through and is even better off once we get through it in the end. Thanks everybody for watching the show. Please sign up on the website to support the campaign, and we will see you next week.